Okay, this one is a little bit different to my norm. This is talking about the greed and the fear around trading, specifically for new traders coming into the market. What a lot of people don't realize is there are professionals in this marketplace. They've been there a long time. I think the assumption that a new trader can come in and, I suppose, win is such a misconception, I guess, to most of the industry. And I think the problem being is that the guys that are there, the market makers, the banks, the institutional players, composite man as a whole, we're all here basically to take money from other people. And that is the longs and shorts of the whole market. So what you're actually looking at is greed driving lots of new people into the market in the first place. It's, I want to make something fast. I want to make something, big in one trade. And that really is the start where a lot of people enter, especially the crypto market in more recent times. I think what you have to look at is that greed also puts you into a bad trade 9 times out of 10. You actually look at then the fear, and fear will drive things like the fear of missing out, the fear of missing the trade altogether, the fear of not catching the top or not catching the bottom. And it's this, stupidity, I guess, just to put it bluntly, that actually damages a lot of new traders' accounts. And I think this is where the fear and greed combo is something that, for what we're doing with Mayfair, we're trying to take away. It's being a little bit more relaxed. It's stripping things back to the basics. It's using a systematic approach rather than looking for tops and bottoms, rather than looking for the ins and outs of every finite piece of detail. These are the problems that ultimately cripple new traders. It's the assumption that I want to know, I need to know. And sometimes it's throwing the 90% of the information away and keeping the good stuff. And that's really the value. The only thing I can compare this to is actually driving a car. When you first start, it's setting your mirrors so that you remember to look behind, it's putting your seatbelt on, it's all the little things, two hands on the steering wheel at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. I think after you've been driving a couple of years, it's jump in, go, and you hadn't given it really a thought. You could be driving for an hour, not realizing, hey, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. I think as a trader, it's no different. It all comes and stems from just experience. And to get rid of some of the fear and greed, I think it's the experience that will add to the ability to, I suppose, dampen it, dilute it, and that's really the objective as a trader. I think the problem, for me personally, is that as a new trader, I see them often coming in on the assumption that we're going to go make a lot of money quite quick. We're going to take this. We're going to do this. People are calling bottoms left, right, and center. And I think when you look at chat rooms and communities and conversations of just the newbie type traders, they have no idea as to how the fund world, the fund space, the large operators, composite man is actually looking at the market. So the problem again then stems from, where are we in a hype cycle? Where are we in a psychology cycle? And this is something that I wanted to cover in this particular video. So what I've done on this particular chart, I've actually added the um, the Wall Street cheat sheet. So if I come into this and stick this on, now this is a dumbed down version of the cheat sheet itself. Now you have to look back in time. New traders might be only coming into the market right now. A lot of people would have come in during the optimism and the thrill stage. I've heard of many traders, even some of the guys we've had in the visitor section, we've actually seen, buying towards the top on the assumption that this is just going to keep going up. Now, when you look back at this, the whole Wall Street cheat sheet, it's kind of flawed in terms of an individual's perspective, but obviously you can look at it as a collective group in terms of where the market is rather than where the individual is in the group. I mean, if you bought at the top, then you're probably down at this depression stage right now. Whereas if you'd bought down at the bottom, 4, 5, 6 years back, then even this you're actually seeing as just a pullback. And therefore, the anger that many traders are feeling right now, and the depression that a lot of guys are going through, anxiety. I had a lot of this I suppose, this conversation during the time that I'd actually posted my rocket. They blew up the rocket post back in March. People were saying, "Oh no, you're wrong. It's an accumulation rather than distribution." And I think the problem being is they were all in this complacency stage right now, thinking the market's just going to go up. It's just going to go up. We see this drop, and the assumption was this was actually only the first one. And when I say the first drop, I'm talking about this particular drop. Where we to? I'm talking about this drop here. So this particular complacency stage, I think a lot of people got caught out on. The assumption that the market was going to continue on up at this particular point, I think, was what 90% of retail traders were looking at. If you look across to what I'm talking about with the rocket post, you'll actually see that the call from the 18th of March was down to around 30k. I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more elongated, but I think this is actually coming true in terms of where we are. It's actually moving across to the kind of time frames that we were looking at. So I think the assumption for a lot of new traders is that if the market doesn't move in an hour, the market doesn't move in a day, it's not going to do this, it's not going to do that. I think what they forget to realize is that some of these markets are driven by market makers, and the market makers being the funds, the institutional investors, the large cap traders. These guys tend to trade on 5 to 12-year cycles, sometimes 15-year cycles. So if you have a deployment period of 5 years, the truth of the matter is they're not going to care anything for the sake of a couple of months, for a couple of years in that regard. So yes, they might be in drawdown, but for them, they're just accepting management fees, again, 9 times out of 10. So when you put this together, right, I'll come across now to the actual cheat sheet itself. And what I'll do is I'll take this off and I'll stick the cheat sheet on. So what you'll actually see is that in this particular cycle, we've clearly had all of this on the left-hand side. We've had the hope, the optimism, the belief, the thrill, the euphoria. And I think it was at this particular drop between the euphoria and the complacency where you see the last of the green candles there, the dark green candles, and then ultimately up to the complacency. That really is only the A-B move, and complacency would give us a B move in terms of where we were with Bitcoin. So I think obviously the anxiety is setting for some people. The denial, is the market over? We saw the China news, we saw the Elon Musk tweet, and a lot of this, guys, is already built into the price. Now, going back to this, obviously market makers, brokers, exchanges, they all know these rules, right? These guys have been operating. They are much smarter than 99% of the retail crowd. And I think, unfortunately, they are there selling shovels in the next gold rush. And that's really where the big money is being made right now. They're taking the hope, the dreams, the ambition of these new traders who are actually quite stupid, I guess, rushing into a new market with no education, no real clue, on the hope and premise that they can strike it rich. And I think that's the only thing I can compare the whole market to right now, especially, like I said, in the crypto space. So again, going back to being just a human, we're already pre-programmed to ultimately end pain as quick as we physically can and keep the pleasure going. So this is why 9 times out of 10, the profit up and being profitable in a trade, we tend to jump out early on the idea that we're scared and fearful of the price moving against us. So we see a little green in terms of the P&L, we take it. Now, again, the opposite is true for the red. We see a little bit of red and we want that pain to stop. However, we know that we can soldier through this a little bit longer on the hope that we actually get something coming through. So the problem you then have is that on this particular point, the more we get into the red, the more we see red happening and red coming, the more we realize that this might not be the case. This might not be the plan. This might not go in our favor. And instead of cutting the losses, most people let them run. So now what we have is we're cutting the profits early, and we're actually letting the losses run much deeper. Now, when you couple that with the fear, the greed, the endorphins that you're receiving when profitable, the hope and ambition of a one trade, one deal, you actually get into this greed, fear, stupidity mentality, the anger, the depression, all of this cycle comes true and repeats itself. So when you actually look in at the enjoyment of a profitable trade, the enjoyment and the satisfaction of seeing green P&L means that you're more likely, just pre-programmed as the human, as I keep saying, you're actually more likely to cut that profit just to lock in the profit. And that's where a lot of people fall short as a whole. Okay, so you then have the, I suppose the logic for me, if I was to summarize all of this, it's intuitive to lose. And I think that's something that humans do naturally. It's something that you have to pre-program yourself or reprogram yourself. And this is something that we advocate, obviously, with Mayfair, that people come in with 15 indicators, they're asking questions about this and questions about that. For me personally, I've done this a long time. I've gone through the tools, I've gone through the cycles that many of you guys are now going through. And I think the reality is all I've seen and all I've taken from the years of experience is to strip it back, take it back to basics. We're looking for a very systematic approach, and everything else becomes white noise. Okay, so given that we are programmed and pre-programmed to try to find the ins and outs of every aspect of this, try to catch every bottom, the truth of the matter is what we're looking for is 60 to 80% of a decent run. I'd rather trade, and I think one of the videos I've shared with the group talked about the probabilities and possibilities. I'd rather trade higher probability than any form of possibility. And I think that's really where we are, today. So just obviously before finishing this video, another video or another um, actual idea that I posted a while ago talks about the psychology. So if you're new to the group and you haven't seen some of these, it's worth going back through some of the posts. I've actually put how the cheat sheet, the Wall Street cheat sheet, fits ultimately into the chart. And then I've used some cartoon animations just to kind of simplify something quite serious in terms of the message. Okay, so that's really something worth covering again and going over and having a read if you haven't already seen it. But I think just to end this particular note, the desperation of many new traders, the brokers, the exchanges, the composite man, whoever you want or whatever you want to regard this as, the professionals in the industry, we ultimately know that the desperation and the fear and greed that are pre-programmed in many new retail traders is actually the advantage, to a trader, to someone who knows what they're looking for. And I think this is where knowing that the brokers and the exchanges are looking for dumb traders to ultimately bring in. They will happily provide plenty of leverage to these dumb traders, knowing full well that 90% of these traders are losing money. So they're happy to put it on their own books. They're happy to, bring this in because for them, it's just outright commission. These guys know their business models. They know their methods. They know the tricks. They know the tricks of the trade. And this is what many new traders are not seeing clearly yet. And it does take them many times, many blown accounts to actually realize that less is actually more when it comes to managing the emotion, managing the psychology, and ultimately stepping into profitable trades through a systematic approach. So I know this one's a little bit long winded, it's slightly off topic to what I usually cover, but I hope this one helps. And I'll be recording another couple soon.